Please, welcome to the stage, Ham Patel, COO, Europe, Middle East and Africa at Oracle NetSuite, and Nikki Tozer, Senior Vice President, Oracle NetSuite EMEA at Oracle NetSuite.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. What is that wedding statement about Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor about doing the same thing but making it different? This topic is quite similar to what we just talked about, but it's great to see you all here this afternoon, and we are going to make this different for you. Okay, so if you haven't noticed from the buzz of this event, it's a great time right now to be doing business in the UK. I'm sure all of you have heard that in the next couple of months it's likely the Bank of England will cut interest rates. We're growing wages faster than inflation, and that's why businesses now are looking to try and take opportunities to take advantage of those situations. But obviously, as you've heard a lot today, I'm sure everybody is trying to do that more with less. So we can't grow at all costs anymore. We need to be looking at how do we make that growth profitable. So there's a great focus on people, processes and technology and making that efficient so that we can achieve that growth but still remain profitable growth. And as you will have heard today as well, AI is one of those things that can really drive profitability, productivity and ROI. It can really supercharge your growth, but it needs fuel to supercharge your growth, and that fuel is your data. So we're going to spend a bit of time talking today about how you can really use AI to unlock the value of your data, and how we can give you some practical examples, which Ham is going to talk about afterwards, with some real-world examples of how you use your data to do that. Okay, so a little bit about the opportunity then. By 2027, 29% of organizational spend is going to be on AI, and that will be about $150 million, which will have about a $17 trillion impact on the global economy. 60% of CEOs expect AI to drive product and service quality, and 75% of that value is going to come out of use cases across 4 different areas, so operations, sales and marketing, R&D and product development, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And the reality is that if you can use AI, you will be able to compete faster, better, and using less resources. So Gen AI at the moment, Goldman Sachs did a survey last year which says that Gen AI will drive productivity by 1.5% over adoption of about 10 years. So that's about twice the rate that the US is growing productivity at the moment. So there's real value in investing time, money, and applications to help you do this. So Dawn just talked a little bit about this. We talk about AI all the time. What my experience is of the customers that we speak to, everyone has very varying knowledge of AI, to very basic knowledge to already trying to implement it in their businesses. But everyone is trying to look at AI and understand what is the value that this is actually going to bring to my business. We inherently know it's good, but what can we actually do to drive it? And Dawn was from IBM. I think the first real example that we saw of IBM was his Deep Blue computer, which beat the world chess champion back in 1987, right? But that's classic AI. Classic AI is typically something that a human being can do, a task that a human being can do, looking at patterns of data and working out what might happen next, right? Summarizing that data and making suggestions on it. But generative AI is the newest part of AI, and that, with the natural language processing, is actually going to be able to create something for you. So it's talking about the power of the myriads of data and real loads of computer processing to be able to create content for you. And that might be a document, it might be an image, it might be text, but that's really the difference now between the classic AI and what generative AI can really do for us. And that slide builds. So what we are, if we look at some examples like a layer down, if we're using Gen AI for large language models to generate text, this is also creative, right? So as I said, these these words mean what they do in English, really. You could generate code, you can generate documents, and we're going to talk about some examples of how this helps you in a minute. If you're summarizing or extracting data, remember this is millions of data with massive computers that a human being themselves could not interpret. It's asking questions of that data and being able to summarize it without changing the original message that it was intended. You can transform data and translate it. So you could literally translate data from one language to another, or transform it to look a certain way or deliver an alternative content with the same meaning. And then this is the bit that perhaps doesn't always, so there's sometimes a misconception around what AI can do and what it can't do. And when you come to reasoning and acting upon that reason, AI, to a certain extent, can have this multi-turn conversation. So you can have an iterative discussion with it to come up with a logical outcome. But it's not a human being, and there's a very long word for this that I can never say, but it's anthropomorphical, whatever, So it means it's not a human being. It cannot come backwards and forwards all the time to be able to come up with an answer. So we don't advise currently that we're trying to do this with AI, and apart from anything else, consulting-wise, it's a bit of a logistical challenge because it has to integrate so many different data sources. But if we look at then, what does a typical use of a large language model look like? And this will look familiar to you from earlier, because one thing I have really understood from AI is everybody's talking about it, and we're all largely talking about the same thing, which is good, because it means that it's probably right. These are 5 areas. Ham's going to talk a bit about strategy and finance shortly. But these are all the areas that I mentioned earlier on that are key to where we think that 75% of value is going to come from in terms of the investment that we make. So customer operations, marketing, sales, and product development. If I give you a couple of topics that we talk about quite a lot in our business, from a sales perspective, and you're all varying companies in different size, etc. But from a sales perspective, we sometimes call this engineered selling. So you're talking about generating pipeline in an automated way. And then how do you interact with those people that you generate the pipeline with and sell to them? So if I look at my data model, I know which kind of companies do we sell to. And therefore, which kind of companies do I want to prospect to? And I have AI produce those for me. And then if I look at that as a company, say by industry, I can also have AI create the material with which we are going to approach those prospects, and then also the sales pitches that we're going to generate from that particular process. So it's an end-to-end engineered selling type process where we're generating the pipeline, acting on the pipeline, and taking it through to a sales pitch. This is one very common example of what people are doing from a generative AI perspective. And the other piece is product development. So if you imagine that you're developing a new product, or you are expanding what you already do with a product that you have, you need to know, what do you need to develop this product to do? And that comes from large volumes of data that might include user feedback. So I'm sure if you have any of your products and services, you take a lot of feedback from your users. Market trends, logs in the system, all of this data that can create for you analysis that shows you why you need to develop this particular product. And then, once you've done that, AI can actually start also to build that code for you. So, the amount of time that people spend coding, you don't need to replace them. You can expand what they're doing and accelerate what they're doing to create more products or accelerate the delivery of those products. And then you can also use AI to test them. So here are 2 of those sort of examples of that 75% bucket of value that you can expect to get out of AI areas are right here in 2 of these particular areas. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ham to talk about some examples of both classic and generative AI.
Thanks, Nikki. So when it comes to value creation, there's a great deal of promise and opportunity, and hence investment, when it comes to generative AI. But for organizations that are looking to create value now, generative AI is just the tip of the iceberg. To get the real return on investment, there is still the traditional AI, the classic AI that Nikki talked about, that you shouldn't really overlook. And that ROI can be delivered in multitude of different ways that you may already be using today. So let's take a look at some of those different formats, and let's see how they're being used in systems today alongside generative AI. So a good example of traditional AI in action is document understanding. You may be receiving invoices into your back office system in scanned images or emails. Now, these can be accessed via traditional AI today using object document detection. And what they're doing there is they're putting out things like the invoice number, the purchase order number, the item quantity, the other details that you might need for downstream processing of that invoice. This is being used by accounts payable departments already, and this is just traditional AI in action. What it's doing is it's allowing these departments to get through a lot more volume much quicker than they would have done in the past. We can switch over to pulling that data out of the invoice and into a record bill. And what this allows the system to then do is to do that onward processing and remove a lot of that legwork that those departments are doing. So it's boosting the productivity of an accounts payable team. Now, somewhere else where we might be using generative AI is over in a retailer, for example, in a commerce department. In the commerce department, one of the things they may have to do on a regular basis is add new products, and those products require descriptions. And we can use generative AI to support the generation of those descriptions. So a user would go to the AI-powered commerce software and just enter some details. So for example, they want to add, it's quite warm here, so let's talk about black leather sandals with rubber soles, suitable for the summer, requiring some level of comfort. By putting that into a system that's got generative AI alongside it, the generative AI can then start to use the large language model to generate a description that is more complete, which is taking on your brand's own tone and style, and then making it in a format that your customers are more likely to respond to. Over in the finance department, they may well be using planning and budgeting software. And these are often, these days, AI-powered. And it's, again, using traditional AI there. So what these tools are doing is typically analyzing the plans, forecasts, and variances. And then the predictive algorithms are then surfacing constantly the information that you need to know that you wouldn't be able to get through if you were an analyst looking at this information on your own. And they're taking really large volumes of financial data and surfacing information that you need to know about, that you need to quickly act upon. This is saving people time on analysis, and again, this is just another example of traditional AI in action. We can take this a step further with generative AI. Here's an example of narrative being created for financial reports. And what's possible today is using generative AI to point at the data in these planning and budgeting systems and get it to start looking at information that it should be generating for you from a narrative perspective, and that analysis and that context. And doing that on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So it's learning from all your information that's previously been going through that platform to deliver value to somebody who's having to maybe do this on a regular basis. These tools are here today, and they can provide that sort of value to any finance organization. So as we've seen from what we talked about and what our colleagues at IBM have talked about, the data is critical for your success with AI. The data tells the story of your business. What the AI allows you to do is to make that story clearer, more useful, and essentially easier to interpret for the people in your organization. The AI produces these results based on the data that it's been given. So if we say it another way, the best AI starts with the best data, and that's your data. So if you want to drive real results within your business, the best data is your business data. And the most useful AI essentially works with your existing business processes, driving your users to make the right decisions at the right time as they're flowing through their standard processes and delivering the right results that you wish. You don't want a specialist team of people that are out there doing the analysis for you and delivering that information too late to your business. So these are the examples. Nikki, where does that leave us?
Oh, thank you, Ham. Okay, so We talked about right at the outset that it's a great time to do business. We have an opportunity to take advantage of that and to build strategies to do that. And that AI can be a huge part of that growth journey and make it a very productive one with a big return on investment. So how do we make it part of those growth plans? So just a few things before we finish off. Build a strategy for AI. You've probably already made a start, and some of you may be a way through it, but this is for everybody. So if you don't have a strategy, build one. If you've got one, start to develop it and make it for the short term with short-term deliverables, but also think about the long-term vision. If I go back to that statement at the start, that 1.5% increase may come over a 10-year broad use of AI, so don't limit yourself to what happens in the short term. And then prepare your data for broader Gen AI use. For years now with any systems, we've talked about rubbish data in, rubbish data out. But more so than ever now, AI is reliant on data being good data, being structured in the right way, standardized, documented, to enable you to make sure that you get the right output. So it's reliant on good input to get that good, consistent output. And then also, you don't need to start from scratch, right? Depending on the size of your organization, you may or may not have lots of data. But you don't need to start from scratch. As Ham said, your data is the good data, but you can combine it with public data. Don't just use public data, combine your data with the public data so that you're building your own language model for your own business. But also, you can buy applications that collect data and use AI in a way that suits your business. And if you do that, you accelerate your AI strategy and your deliverables because you can start to get value right out of the box. All right, so there are pieces of advice. We hope that we've put some seeds of thoughts in your mind about your generative AI journey coming up. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. You can either do that here at this QI code, or indeed we are right down the end, the big Oracle stand. There's plenty of people there to start the conversation with you as well. But in the meantime, thank you for your attention. I know it's a long day with a lot to think about. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best with your journey, whatever that takes you. Thank you.